Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, or wherever you are today. My name is Joe Haslam, and I'm the Executive Director of the Owner Scale Up Program here at I Business School. It's a delight to be with Federico today. I mean, this is one in a series of talks that we have with people who've taken a Scale Up course. In reality, I continue, especially people like Federico who live in Madrid. In reality, I spend a lot of time, even after the courses are over, meeting up. So it's, it's sort of interesting just to put that conversation online and let other people hear it, because the same themes emerge all of the time. You find yourself talking about the same things, talking about the importance of taking risks and hiring people and all of these things. And I think it's very, very valuable and also important for other entrepreneurs to understand that some of the problems they're having are very common. So what I find among all of the people who take the Owner Scale Up program is that a lot of problems reappear. So for that reason, what we're going to try and do is have a talk for maybe 30 minutes or thereabouts with Federico, and we're going to hear his story and talk about some of the Scale Up challenges. So let me start first by welcoming you. And thank you very much for being here and for giving us your time. Just maybe introduce yourself in the beginning. Just people are always curious, where did you grow up and how did you get to where you are today?
Okay. Well, I'm from Costa Rica. 9 years ago, we moved from Costa Rica to Madrid because of work related with my wife. And then I started my journey in terms of entrepreneurship. My background, I'm a marketing sales guy from Kimberly-Clark, Avon, and British American Tobacco. So, and I always had a very big concern or a very big desire to do my own business. And well, we started with several stuff like anybody. We started with pineapple from Costa Rica. We started with different ideas on how to develop an app or something like that. And that made us go to a lot of cafes, restaurants, have lunch, dinner. And being from Costa Rica, I love good coffee. And I started tasting the coffee and I would say, oh, this is because this is Robusta and stuff. And I started seeing the players with the different brands and different machines. And I saw an opportunity. And then we started our own path, our own journey in terms of coffee. We developed a biodegradable, compostable coffee pots, an espresso-like with Costa Rican coffee. And we designed 3 different moments of consumption. Like the coffee in the morning. Coffee in the morning, people usually drink it with milk. So awake and dreaming. And then it's a more strong coffee. You pour a little bit of milk over there.
We'll get into the whole coffee thing. Okay. And I having had conversations with you previously. I know it's so funny because I start my day with a cup of coffee, but I know little about it. I mean, it's funny. Some people don't even know the difference between like mezcla. They say like mezcla.
Blends,
They what exactly does that mean? They literally. The color of the packet or something like that, which for something that you take every day is incredible that you don't do a little research to know which might be better.
Yeah, but usually the brands or the companies do not tell you that what you're having. Like if it's a blend, you wouldn't know it's a blend and you wouldn't know the percentage of mix of the blend and you wouldn't know the origin of the coffees you're having. So yeah, it's incredible that like 80% of adults drink coffee every day, like 2-3 times a day, or 14 in Finland, depends on the country.
Did you say 80% of
80% of adults drink coffee?
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's a huge market.
Yeah.
And until very recently, you wouldn't know anything about the coffee that you were drinking.
Yeah.
Or in the restaurants and the horecas, nobody knows about what they're serving. They know here in Spain, food is very important. Mm-hmm. So you'll go and they'll tell you about what ingredients and one special preparation that dish has and everything. And the first dish, the second, the third, the fourth. But when you get to the coffee, you ask, what's this coffee? And they would say, oh, well, I don't know, just coffee. Sure. And that's what we're trying to break, the just coffee mentality.
No, it's a coffee isn't a drink, it's a lifestyle, right? That's what people say. I had a whiskey business once, or at least a friend of mine had a whiskey business, and I learned a lot from him. And that's what he used to say all the time about this. So, I mean, one of the things you've had, and it's something I recommend to all students, is that it's always a good time to spend working in a corporation.
Yes.
You know, you mentioned the corporations you work with, because you do learn how to deal with corporations. And one day as an entrepreneur, you be on the other side of the table, and it's really useful to understand how they think. And a lot of scaling is all about making partnerships. You know, I've discussed before, and you would have heard me in class say that it's a common mistake lots of very capable people make, which is when they start scaling up their journey, is they try to continue to be experts in everything.
Yes.
So they sort of say, like logistics, you know, I can read a few books and then I can become an expert. I mean, you can't possibly, you know, cram 10 years of logistic experience into just by learning, no matter how smart you are. So talk to me about what stage your business is at now, and what challenges you're facing.
Okay, the first thing is our company name, it's FUDI&Co.
Yeah.
And we built FUDI&Co in terms of the food experience. In terms of a foodie is not a person that it's like a specialist or somebody that eats very upscale taster of coffees, but it's somebody that likes to experience new things, adventure stories, go to the next new best place. It's accessible luxury. It's not very expensive. And in that sense, what we developed during the years with the coffee, it's an expertise in coffee.
Mhm.
And being from a coffee country, then it's something that you become passionate about.
Yeah.
But the thing is, as you said before, and in the course that we were together, for us to have a company that we could actually sell coffee around Europe, for example, we had to start making partnerships with roasters, for example. There's a lot of small roasters or micro roasters. That's very good, very nice. You get a very clean product, very beautiful, very artisan. Right?
Artisanal or whatever, yeah.
But if you want to scale a business, if you wanted to make it grow, you need the right partner that can get you from 1 ton of coffee to 10,000 tons of coffee.
Yeah.
And that you can do that within weeks, days, months. And we started a partnership with a roaster in Asturias, and that's where we started. We've been focused since then on the coffee, and we've been like our suppliers of coffee, also the importers. They're very big, and they have a lot of room to play for us to develop the business.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was talking to you a few weeks earlier, we've been growing a lot in the B2B business, hotels mainly, for example. Yeah. In the hotels, we put the machines for the breakfast. You go to breakfast. It's a super automatica, so you just with a button you get a cappuccino or get an espresso. Those machines are very expensive. Mm-hmm. And since we've been growing very fast, one of the bottlenecks that we've encountered it's the cost of the machine. Yeah. And we were discussing, I don't know if you remember, and you said,
of course I remember, yes.
And you said something that you said during the course, and you always keep saying it's a problem can become an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And in this case, we were trying to solve this opportunity by getting money from banks or investors to keep buying more and more capital or more and more machines. But what we saw is the possibility to develop a relationship with a machine supplier or a machine manufacturer. Yeah. And that's what we've been doing, and it's a work in progress. And that will help us scale faster in terms of the clients that we get. On the other side, after the pandemic, and after a couple of exercises we did in supermarkets, we realized that retail is very important, and that getting the product close to the consumer, it's very important. People really value that during the pandemic, and to have very good products, very high standards that you don't get in a supermarket. Mm-hmm. So we started to grow our B2C business focused on digital in terms of trying not to make your own digital coffee store, because that's what anybody does. And it's very hard. You have to put a lot of money to actually make it relevant. So we started more like interaction between the store and the neighborhood. Okay. So using WhatsApp, you can actually send a WhatsApp, ask for your kind of ground coffee that you like, and we'll
Yeah.
take it home to your house.
Mhm.
So try to integrate a little bit that digital with real.
Yeah. I mean,
with
that's
the
a classic
real-
example of what's called do things that don't scale, which is sort of what you have to do. I mean, one of the things, I constantly emphasize is experimentation,
Yes.
and again, this is so much about scaling is counterintuitive. In this, the first thing is, this idea that like I learn what I need to rather than, whereas instead the counterintuitive thing is to find an expert. And similarly in scaling, the idea of experimenting before you scale up is absolutely fundamental. So you have to try and do things that, like, I mean, obviously you can't just run a business on WhatsApps and deliveries and stuff like that, but it's an interesting experiment to do it in the beginning to get close to the customer. You sort of like, you get to, it's an opportunity because patterns are quite common. So
Yes.
people will tell you just by taking the extra effort to meet the customer, they'll kind of tell you something else that could spark off, a business line that is scalable. So this is the thing that you often see people, and they're very reluctant to do things that don't scale in the beginning. I mean, the famous example was the early Airbnb. They were taking lots of pictures of now that was obviously never going to scale. But what it did was that when they agreed to go to every person who wanted to put their apartment in Airbnb and to take like quality pictures of them and things like that, what was interesting about that is that allowed them to have conversations with the people who would then say things like, well, the reason I'm doing this and what's important about a customer, and the customers tell me that like having freshly baked bread or fresh coffee in your case is really important. So that's a sort of, again, it's the sort of counterintuitive thing. And so it's really interesting hearing. I often say that you learn more things by talking to other entrepreneurs than often you do talking to professors with theories and frameworks, because that's a classic example of, something you're doing that even if your business is not in coffee, that I need to try, and we need to do a few things, which is never going to be like the heart of the business, but it does allow me to come in contact with a customer, and that's very useful. So, in that sense, you're conforming with the kind of things I was suggesting. And talk to me about opening. Yeah, you're going to come back on
but
that.
also, yes, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about the thing. It's when you said that we have to put on our like scientific hat on and do a lot of experiments. The way to do experiments is to get very specific with the consumer.
Yeah.
And then after that, because a store, it's all about location. First is location,
Yeah.
and then the whole experience. So location is something that you can hire that, but the experience is something that you have to develop.
Yeah.
And that's the part that we're working right now to develop the the most relevant experience. So then it's all about location, and opening stores and stores and stores.
Yeah.
And we're in that part right now.
But yeah, that was actually where I was going with the question. I wanted to ask you the process of opening a store, because we all with online, a lot of people say, that they're like, why do everything is online now?
Yes.
Why are you putting together stores? But I've heard it described as, one of the cleverest things that was ever done was when Apple decided to reverse the trends, and do stores, right?
Yeah.
Because people were saying, that listen, stores are dead, whatever. But it turned out that, having stores and having these temples with their wood and,
Yes.
These kind of things, they brought customers in, and then the customers would talk, and then they would learn about pain points they were having. So, in a sense, it was counterintuitive at the time, but it turned out to be an absolute genius move. So, I mean, talk to me about the decision making behind opening a retail location and what you're learning.
Retail, the first thing is to get the product very near the consumer. But also, for example, if you see the store, it's not a coffee shop, it's a store.
Yeah.
And you know that in the store we have a roaster, small roaster, and we have a small grinder. So the flexibility and the experience of the coffee comes a lot with the size of the grain that you develop, with the level of roasting of the coffee. Mm-hmm. So we have that in the store, and we have the massive production that we put in the store, but we can also give the consumer's experience. So, for example, we're developing something in the line of I don't know if you know Vivino, but it's the wine wine app where you learn a lot about the
I know
different
the
kind
beer
of
one,
wines.
but not the wine
Okay.
one. Yeah, yeah.
So
I'm
it
more a
works
beer guy
probably,
than a wine
well,
guy. Yeah,
beer and coffee would
Yeah.
work the same way.
yeah,
So then you'll get like these small hubs, logistic hubs,
Yeah.
where you modify the product that comes from the big manufacturing roasters.
yeah,
And then you can actually develop a system where you deliver the coffee to the consumers
yeah.
a little bit more tailor-made.
Sure.
So that's the idea, and that gives extra sales to the store, not only the walk-ins or the people that come every
Yeah.
day, and that's the idea. We're trying to prove that and to see if we can get the store to sell much more than just takeaway coffee.
Yeah.
And if we do that, then we have a business model that we can replicate
Yeah.
in the different neighborhoods, areas,
So
cities,
this is
cities.
classic scaling kind of that, I always say that if you want to have 50 locations in 5 years, what you don't have, the consulting methodology is divide the problem. So that says open 10 a year for 5 years. And that's not the way to do it at all. In fact, you're better off to spend like 4.5 years
in this one.
Yes, doing one. And then you learn it and then you go from
Yes.
4 to 50. Plus, just even from financing it and stuff like
Yes.
that, it makes a hell of a lot more sense. But again, this is when the understanding exponentiality and understanding that the curve can be quite low in the beginning, but once it kicks in, it can be, and to have, worked out the problems at small scale is better than having,
Yes.
if you have
Absolutely.
10 locations, then you have 10 problems.
I also remember you saying in the course that a business or a business idea or a company, if it's profitable, being poorly handled,
Yeah.
that's a good business. If you need to be perfect in everything to make the business work,
Yeah.
you're doing something very,
Yeah.
very wrong.
There's a sort of a joke about, I often talk about Twitter. Like Twitter is, people talk about what's your best business. And I kind of say that, Twitter is perhaps, like Twitter is almost the worst run business in the world, but it's still profitable. So to have like a business model that even though there seems to be like nobody running that company and
Yes.
it still manages to be profitable, like that, if you have to be perfect to do everything, and of course, so the people often say like, why should I do this course? And they say like, I think I'm an 80% manager and I want to be 100% manager. And I'm saying, no. What I will try and do is turn you into something that doesn't have to be perfect in order to work.
Exactly.
And that means that, when you have down days or when, things kick in because of a pandemic or something, you're not. I mean, that's one of the things, I study nature a lot because I guess ecosystems is what we do. And you see that a lot about, plants in the desert and things like that, about how they survive. Anyway, I was telling you not to get into too much detail about coffee, so I shouldn't get into too much detail about ecosystems. But it's a really fascinating to see, like certain things, how that certain animals that grow really quickly,
Yes.
they also die really quickly. So that's exactly the same with a business. That any business that grows really quickly is very vulnerable to dying. So this is the thing, that you have to sort of build it slowly and profitable. And then slowly and profitably, and then you sort of like, it gives you some, if you take money on too quick. Anyway, we'll onto that in a second. How are you funding the business, by the way? That's a sort of something we've never discussed, actually.
Yes. Well, like I would say 3 main sources. At first, the friends and family.
You
and-
could
and-
say fools
the
as well.
fools.
Yeah.
That was our first part,
Yeah.
and the 2/3 of our development and the development of the store and of the model and of the buying capital for the machines, we financed that with the 3Fs.
Yeah.
And for the last year and a half, we've had banks in terms of lines of credit,
Mhm.
but still we are not going, or we're not looking for roundups of investors
Yeah.
till we have it right.
Well, exactly. I mean, because like the clock ticks.
Yes.
Because
And you have one opportunity
yes.
to be relevant, to be profitable, to be good, to be great.
Yeah.
And we are making lots of progress, but we're not there yet
Yeah.
to go and ask for.
It's
for that
very,
next
I
one.
understand how people who don't have access to family, friends, and fools, why they go straight for venture capital, and I've done that myself in some cases, and but it really does make it difficult, because they have most of them don't have evergreen funds. So they basically have a cycle and they're looking for a return within a cycle. And they're also looking for 10x, outsized returns. And as soon as they start seeing you as a tax loss more than as a source of a 10x, that's a very difficult relationship. But yeah, it's
and being in coffee, it's a commodity.
Yeah.
So it's so big, and there's so many people doing stuff related to coffee that you have to really nail and be very specific on your proposal, because if not, you dilute in the ecosystem. So you want to be relevant, and for us, we're working on this. I don't know if it's 4 years, but definitely in a very strong business model, but because we want, I don't know, not 40, like 400 or 4,000 stores across Europe in terms of the business
I've
model.
told people that on average, it takes about 18 months to even have a notion what you're doing. It takes 4 years to get to some sort of product market fit, and probably 10 years to get to a return. It often surprises, particularly, less so people in the owner scale-up program and more so people in the MBA who are interested in doing, and they sort of think 10 years is a lifetime, and I say, well, almost every entrepreneur didn't expect that this is what it would take. It's sort of you get into it and next thing 10 years has passed.
We started at the end of 2017.
Yeah.
And we started picking up early 2020.
Yeah.
That's where we went to make the installation of the second batch of machines for a very big hotel chain that we're working on. And 2 weeks after that, everything was closed for almost 2 years, because hotels were closed. And for us, it was like 60 or 65% of our income. So that was, we've now been, we're around in our 4th year, and things are working pretty good in the B2B part of the business, because we already developed our own formula for growing. But we need to develop the B2C business as well, because there's the loyalty, there's the long-term business.
Yeah, and it's contact with the customer. I mean, that's often talked about what's called the B2B. Well, it's called the B2B pivot, whereas a lot of businesses start off as B2C because it does give you the contact with the customer, the experimentation cycle. But in the medium to long term, it's B2B because that's where the money is. That's where the relationships are. But the B2C element, I mean, I know lots of companies that that they almost run the B2C just as a break-even kind of exercise. But the real money comes from. But the contact with the customer is you literally can't live without it. Even from a psychological point of view, that person that comes in every day that smiles at you and makes you happy.
200 people every day at the store.
Yeah,
it's a huge input of information every day.
So that's sort of you can be too clever. People are thinking oh yeah, and selling to businesses just takes such a long time, and experimenting. You don't necessarily always get good feedback either. You could run a pilot. And they mightn't necessarily really tell you, the sort of why it's working, because remember they're in a negotiation relationship with you as well, so very often they're not as likely to sort of to just, oh, your product is wonderful, we take it at any price.
Yeah, and that's I know you didn't want me to get very into the coffee, but just to let you know that we try to develop a link between the consumer and our coffees.
Yeah,
and it's not through the regular product origin that we do communicate the origin of the product, traceability and everything.
Yeah.
But the different moments of consumption. Coffee in the morning is very important. Coffee after lunch, it's very important in Europe and in other parts. And there's just coffee lovers or coffee junkies that have 20 cups of coffee a day. Yeah. So we worked on that and we branded and we have a specific name for Awaken Dreaming for the morning, Dining and Friends for the midday, and Coffee Lover and Proud. Yeah, the coffee for. So
it's about the experience rather than the technical name.
Yes, because the technical name, it's important. The traceability is important. Quality is important. But anybody could do that. Anybody can do that. There's a lot of suppliers and there's a lot of branding, and also then you have to and this is in terms of trying to scale. If you start very small with developing a product in the community industry, or not community, commodity industry,
Yeah.
Then you're not going to be competitive in terms of pricing.
Yeah.
And pricing, it's very, very important to take into account to develop the business.
Yeah.
You need, if you want to scale,
Mhm.
it has to be a mass market price.
Yes.
And in order to do that, you need to pair up with a lot of people involved in the industry
Yeah.
that know how to get your costs down and your product. Because as you said,
Yeah.
we don't know everything, and we don't need to know everything.
I'm really interested in the area of pricing actually, because you know, almost every, there's a sort of a saying that no business is happy with their pricing. You know, even like it's a sort of like you always
Well,
feel.
I would say I'm happy with my price.
Yeah. Okay. But so talk to me about how you arrived. I mean, your background in marketing
Yes.
should help you in this area.
Yes.
You know, because of, you know, you obviously want to be mass market, but price
Yes.
does signal value.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so I mean, I know a clothing company here in Madrid, and I should say it was Eco Alf.
Yes.
And I remember saying, actually, her going telling me that, you know, they were told by a retailer they were working with, by a company in New York, that it had to be at the same price as their competitors.
Yes.
And that was, you know, his pricing model allowed them to come in at a lower price. And they said, no, like if you want to compete with them, the ticket price has to be exactly the same. And you know, because so pricing. So talk to me just about your pricing and how you arrived at those.
Okay. Mainly, you have two big segments on the market, like the small micro lots, micro breweries, micro roasters.
Yeah,
they're very high in price.
Yes,
because there's scarcity and
they have low volume, basically.
Low volume, high quality, so that gives you a very, very high price.
Mhm.
And then you have the commercial mass market. I know that better than the small artisan market.
Yes.
I'm not gonna put my product up there because that's ultra premium or premium, but it takes you away from the segment of the mass market.
Yeah.
So there you have a couple of big brands globally that have a very competitive price because they've been alone and there's a lot of concentration, so that they've been building up price.
Yeah.
So that gives you the space to be just a little bit under them, but in the premium segment.
Yeah.
So you'll be the value for money of the premium segment.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
Yeah.
That's where we're.
Value for money in the premium segment. Okay.
So it's
so
like
I'm just sort of thinking, you know, like
the contradiction.
Of clothing, but you know, it is a space, right? Which is to say, but it's, you know, it's a sort of like, I often heard it's called above the bar pricing. In other words, that there is a bar which it's above, but it's not below the bar pricing, but it's not at the very highest, you know, kind of thing. So, but it's quite, you know, pricing is. I remember famously a student walked out of one of my classes once after I talked to him about pricing, and I was like, "Where are you going?" And he was like, he said, "I've just realized we've been doing this all wrong." And I now realize what we need to do, and there's not a moment to waste. He said, I just took out my phone and I booked a flight back to Belgium, and I'm gone tomorrow, you know. And he sort of like tapped me on the shoulder and said, you know, I got what I needed. And I was like, oh, okay. It was like, it was a very, very strange moment. Okay. But
hope it worked.
Yeah, no, he's the guy's flying, you know. I mean, you often see people say things to me like, I wish I'd met you 10 years earlier. And I often tell people, like, what I have to tell you will take me 5 minutes to tell you, but very often will take a year before you believe me, you know. And I don't think I'm, you know, any super expert, but because I talk to the same kinds of people all the time, you see the patterns repeat, you know. So it's nothing other than that. But pricing is whether you're selling software or whether you're selling coffee, it's just a huge issue that everyone, you know, needs to address.
And it has to work in hand with our brand image. Because as I told you, we are experiences, we're sensations, we're emotions, we are a lot of things. And cosmopolitan and trips and everything, but we're not sibaritas or the very stuck up part of the coffee, because we know everything and you don't, and we're going to tell you how to drink your coffee. If you like coffee with milk, just drink it with milk. But have a great coffee with milk.
What do you know? I know people are reluctant to talk about competitors, but it sort of, I have a very good friend I went to school with who works in Starbucks. And so what do you make of Starbucks? I mean, because some people say that they've been great for coffee, you
Yes,
know,
they are.
and some people have said are quite critical of them. I mean, where do you, in terms of,
I
you know,
would
the
say-
fact that they've like, you know, they think the coffee experience shouldn't be like people walking around, you know, and this kind of thing.
But that's
you know?
the thing. It
Yeah.
depends. This week on Monday, I was in Alimentaria in a like kind of like this
Yeah.
presentation for Ostelco, and it was me and this guy from a micro roastery that he makes a very good job at it.
Yeah.
But he's very purist.
Yeah.
He
Sure.
loves the
You meet those in
the
every
exact,
industry.
yeah, the exact temperature, the exact moisture level, the exact. And it's true, and you can. It's like wine.
Yeah.
You can go and buy, I don't know, a $500 or a $100
Yeah.
bottle of wine that have been perfect since the picking of the grapes and the whole process. But you can also have a 30, 25, 15,
Yeah.
probably 5
Sure.
great wine. So in terms of how hard you are on yourself in terms of how to develop your product, then it's up to you. For me, I think Starbucks it's making a good job. It's a great job.
Yeah.
They started making the profession of barista, for example,
Yeah.
relevant, and for not only for the United States, but in terms of the world, they have developed and make it trendy
Yeah.
to work with coffee outside home.
Yeah.
Outside of the brew coffee that you make at home, make it more like an experience. They have a format of store called Reserve, the Starbucks Reserve.
Okay.
They have one in Tokyo, one in Milan, one in New York, one in Seattle, I think in Chicago, and they're opening, I think, in London.
Mhm.
And this is like the Willy Wonka of coffee.
Yeah.
So you go in, I don't know if you've
Are you
been.
talking about the roasteries?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, the Reserve, Starbucks
Yeah.
Reserve.
They
Where
ha-
you go in and you see the
Okay.
big machines roasting the coffee,
Yeah.
and it's like going to Disneyland.
I've been
or
to the one in Shanghai,
Okay.
and that is absolutely incredible.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
and they have, as you say, you
Yes.
see the roasting, and
Yes,
there's
everything.
bar.
You
It's
can sit down
yeah.
in front, and they will actually a master roaster
Yeah.
would explain to you the process.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, I remember being small, going to Tampa to the Anheuser-Busch
yes,
factory.
Busch Gardens.
Yeah, the beer. Since you're a beer guy,
yeah.
and I remember the whole process.
Budweiser isn't beer, but that's
No,
all.
but-
That's
I
all.
mean, okay. So you can actually go and see the whole process.
Yes.
The machine.
Yeah.
Well, it is the same thing, and they're educating people and
Yeah.
making the coffee industry sexy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, as a coffee
Yeah. That's
coffee
okay.
guy, that's great.
Yeah.
And they have to keep on doing that and just push people to get better ideas and to develop business models that are competition for them.
Yeah.
That's an incentive. So for me, my take on that, it's anybody that's doing a great job
Yeah.
has to do more of it.
Sure.
And the industry, it's going to get bigger, and our pie, it's going to be bigger. So our slice is going to be bigger,
Yeah.
and everybody's going to be more happy
Okay.
with their
Um,
part.
something we cover in the scale course, but also I'm sure you're not surprised that I'd ask this, but you know, like data and fault, you know, what data do you look at?
Yes.
You know, so sort of
Yes.
like the classic. What's the first piece of data you look at when you come in the morning?
Yes.
You know, what numbers do you like really focus
Yes.
on? Just talk to me a bit about how you
There's
run the
there's a
business.
little bit on three the inputs of information. The
Yeah.
first one is like sales.
Yeah.
Sales.
That the gross,
yes, yeah.
gross number,
Daily
I guess.
sales.
Yeah. Sure.
If we're growing against last week, or for the store, we have an integrated system that we can actually see live sales. So when in
Yeah.
any part of the world, so sales is a big part.
Yeah.
Consumer, like everyday contact with consumers, for me, it's very important to try to move forward very fast in learning the things that we need to
Yeah.
understand clearly. And like I would say every month or every 2 months, we'll go through like very thick, dense informations of the industry, like or even the yearly the yearly report on growth, cafeterias, what's doing Starbucks,
Yeah.
what's happening
So that's
with the
kind
prices.
of that's external data rather than
Yes.
internal data.
Yes.
It's useful you say that
Yes.
because a lot of people neglect that, you know, and we live in a time when that information is very accessible
Yes.
to get, you know.
It's very, and for coffee,
Yeah.
since it's a commodity and it's a worldwide commodity, you get everything
Yeah.
online, and you can buy annual reports for $30, $40. You don't have to invest 5,000 in a Kantar or
Yeah.
a very specific Nielsen analysis of the
Yeah.
category. You have lots of information.
Yeah, and so you can see things that are working in other places,
Yes.
and then that's just like an early warning system kind
Yes.
of thing.
The decision to open the coffee store
Yeah,
was because of those studies, what was happening in Korea, Japan, for example,
yeah,
and also in Spain, in Madrid.
right.
Since the pandemic, there's been a lot of cafeterias and horecas closing.
Yeah,
Like it was UK and Spain, one of the two biggest markets in Europe in terms of horecas.
Mhm.
240,000 horecas in Spain,
yeah,
and around 80,000 closed.
wow,
And you would see two things happening. First, the rentals of the locals available and not going up as at the same speed as
Yes,
any
yeah.
other retail business in terms of rentals. And also you would see that McCafe, Starbucks,
Yeah.
La Gloria, the organized chains
Mhm.
were very hungry
Yeah,
to open more and more and more.
Yeah.
So there was a big decrease in the number of venues in
Mhm.
several other kinds of horecas,
Yeah.
but in cafeterias, it was 0.75
Okay.
of decrease, that it's almost flat.
Yeah,
So you would see everybody fighting for those 80,000 spots that open in the
Mhm.
market.
yeah,
So, and home consumption of coffee grew a lot.
yeah,
So that's why we took the idea to open the store and to develop the business. So yeah, for us, input in terms of internal information of sales, of our mainly KPI, it's sales and expend.
yeah,
So like today we spend in what? And is it really relevant?
Yeah.
Do we have to buy that? Do we have to make that expense? Or we can live without it and wait a little bit more the top line to grow faster.
But you got this idea of the dashboard, which is very popular, sort of like almost to compare, and they're fantastic. I mean, again, one of the things we cover a lot is that technology. I'm old enough to remember when technology was very complicated.
Yes.
You'd like client server and
Me
these
too.
kind
I'm
these kind of
I look
things.
young, but I'm not that young.
So, but like that, what's available now in the cloud is just
Yes.
at a monthly rental
Yes.
price is
Yes.
astounding.
Amazing, yes.
So to not use these tools is incredible.
Yes.
Even you don't have to wait until you're like 500 people
No.
to start using these kind of tools. And
Yes.
like whenever I see an Excel spreadsheet, I think like that could be, there's probably an online tool available, whether it's HR or finance or just that will take your data and then will sort of show you a dashboard, which you sold this number last year, last month, or that
Yes.
kind of thing, and it's extremely useful in terms of you always need targets in life. I know that whenever I have to grade.
Well, we have
things.
I would say an 8-year plan.
Mhm.
So we'll grow. I don't know. Right now would be like 100 times from what we're right now, probably.
Yeah.
But in order for us to build that plan in the B2C sector, in the B2B sector, we need a lot of information and make bets after experimentation.
Sure.
And say we're going to go
Double
after
down
this.
on
Yes.
So that's the classic scaling. It's amazing. Like I co-founded 6 companies, and it's only like in the 4th one that I really understood the importance of experimentation, double down, and stop doing things.
Yes, exactly.
It's such your brain is telling you always like that you got to no, you've got to try and diversify and things like that. When the truth is that almost every business that scaled, it's because they've made a bet on something that works.
Exactly.
And that has to be the thing. And then you have to not only but keep doubling down, and that does involve stop doing things, and you're going to have unhappy customers. And you sometimes wonder, like, well, we put all our eggs here in this basket, but there isn't really any other way to do it. The great products that have been created in the world have almost always been because somebody made a bet, and it's not that they're saying we know better than the customer,
No.
but they're just very much saying, this coffee or this whatever, this cup size or something like that. We think this is the one that everyone will go for. They mightn't always know why, but this is the one that we think that will be a blockbuster.
Exactly.
It's quite interesting. Okay, so we're sort of starting to approach near the end, but I just want to say, like, what have I missed? What kind of things do you want to cover, and what sort of, if you were me, what questions would you be asking?
How to get more money and how to grow fat.
Yeah.
I would say that in terms of or something that I always miss in these kind of conversations, or even if you get and sit down with a lot of entrepreneurs that have been very successful, is we always hear about the good part, the success, but
Yeah.
I don't know, we kind of forget about, to get there you have to fail a lot of times, and there's a lot of fail attempts to get just one good attempt.
They say, by the way, I'll give you a data point on this, right? That this is why a lot of innovation is so difficult in corporations, because the rate has to be like 100 experiments, 97 failures, and 3 big successes, which is, in corporate, you don't get anywhere by failing anything, like, so that's one of the issues. But, I always say that with my classes that, I assume that if 80% of them go well, for 80% of them to go well, 20% of them must go badly.
Yes.
Because I whatever, I
Yes.
do a workshop exercise or something like that, and sometimes it doesn't work. But in not working, do you kind of ask yourself, you're forced to ask yourself, why didn't it work? And then
Yes.
that can kind of lead to a different
Yes.
place. I
But
mean,
in order for you to do that,
yeah,
you need a lot of grit.
yeah,
You need a lot of self-motivation.
yeah,
You need to keep positive.
Yeah.
Because nothing is going to be built if you're not pushing behind it every day, every single moment. And because you don't get born with a positive mindset.
no.
I've been reading, by the
Right.
way,
Okay.
Finite and Infinite Game from James Clear,
Okay.
and how to try to have a more infinite mindset than a finite, I win, lost, because in order for you to win, somebody has to lose in the finite mindset.
Yeah.
In the more infinite mindset, you're in it because you like to play, because just for the fun of the game. So trying to keep motivated to because there's lots of failures. You said, I know 1% of it's success, I think, but you have to have the commitment, the grit to stand up and do it again, and even then you wouldn't know if it's going to work, but you have to enjoy the part of learning, experiencing, doing.
I think, and I've had this described, literally, you have to feel as if doing this is the only thing that will make you happy.
Exactly.
People are reluctant to say it in those terms. I mean, I've heard actors say this as well, which is because acting is also a very difficult profession. You have these kind of casting sessions, and
a lot of pressure.
I wouldn't know either, but but you know what I mean. You have like directors who come you in, and it's a bit like the way the VCs like pitch you. You come in and they say, "Oh, we need you for role. You're too young. You're too old. You're not scary enough. You're too scary." They can really play with your mind, and in order to do that and to sort of, turn into a person every night on stage. This has to be the only thing that will make you happy. Like if anything else will make you happy, and you should do that. And it's a similar thing with entrepreneurship. But I mean, there's sort of 2 things I often mention, which is the unbelievable feeling of doing something that either someone else said couldn't be done, or you thought it couldn't be done. I mean, it's absolutely, it's a sort of a feeling. I remember Arsene Wenger, the football manager, famously said that football management was like that. He said it was like 90% hell, but and maybe with 10%, but the 10% high was so good that you had to put yourself through the 90% of hell. And it's exactly the same that many entrepreneurs experienced this in the pandemic, where they were kind of they were like, okay, this pandemic is a real thing. And they've kind of sat down and said, okay, so what can we guarantee on, and what are we going to lose? And then, people in certain industries have transformed their business. I'm thinking of, Travel Pack and these kind of companies that there are Travel Park. That's like, this has been the making of them. But so many people, it forced them to kind of take reality, and it forced them to kind of do stuff. But it has to be that thing whereby you have to feel almost a religious, that this was meant for me. This was kind of destined for me. Like I was supposed to fall into this hole, because by falling into this hole, I realized this.
Yes.
And it's nothing we want to talk about, but you hear so many entrepreneurs say that, like, life punching you in the face, you need life to punch you in the face every so often, for you to sort of like to really say, okay, I really want to do this. Therefore, I accept this as part of the thing.
And to enjoy the small victories.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of failure, but there's a lot of small victories. It's not like if you sign a very big contract, because you're not going to do that like every day. But even if you had a great week and you made progress, for example, we were talking about the idea to transform our biggest problem, that was the bottleneck of the machines, to transform it into an opportunity.
Yeah.
So after weeks of trying to think, really, are we going to find a startup that is going to match our own philosophy? And then it's nothing like that, but it's another window, another door, and you go through it and you see the opportunity there.
Yeah.
And you realize that it's not just talking about something, but it's actually doing something and making it happen. That's small victories that are very satisfying. Yeah. But it's a hard day to day. You have to work a lot. I think that's what we miss.
Yeah.
Because scaling and the technical part is very important.
Yeah.
But for me, I think that 70% it's your head. In your head. You have to.
It's and that's sort of why coaching is a big thing, and I can't say I used to do a lot of sports, so I've had kind of coaching influences from the beginning, and I kind of reacted against that in business. But now I'm a believer, not just in a coach for the owner, for the CEO, but also for the executive team. You must have somebody you can talk to, because I always say, like, keep your wife as your wife, or your husband as your husband, or whatever, your partner is your partner, because they're needed for that. So don't turn them into your business sounding board.
True.
Because the same thing about don't go into business with your friends, because if you have a friend, keep them as a friend, because you need friends. You find other people to go into business with, but you need to have somebody with whom you can be 100% open about your hopes and fears and these kind of things, because you can never be 100% open with your investors, 99% like kind of thing, but you're sort of, there's always something you'll hold back. And similarly with your employees, you have to come in every day smiling, looking like $1 million, looking like this couldn't be any better, because that transmits, that makes them happy. If you come in and you're negative or in any way, that will transmit. So in that sense,
but you have to train to become like that.
Yeah,
that's it.
You have to, but that's it. I mean, this is why we sort of like we don't live forever. We're not the Highlander, so we have to try and kind of like learn this from other people in order to put it in practice. Which is so many things that won't do. People will think, oh, this isn't important, when it is. So whatever it is, whether it's pricing or dashboards or how to hire people or how to do partnerships or how to raise money and all of these things, like given infinite time, you'd work it out, but there isn't infinite time. No. And the other thing, and I'm going to sort of close on this, is this notion of, it's called like the FOG framework, which often talks about this notion of like a lot of people have the ability and the motivation, but very often it takes something to happen to them to sort of like decide to focus, which is to say, like, either now sometimes it can be like just a meeting that goes really badly, and some people it's something like a divorce or something like that, or just that they had to fire somebody for whom it will never forget. But most people who've achieved things in their life, it's because something has happened that has very much forced them. But then, of course, what you also need to do is you need to have other people to help you get through that. So it's one thing to kind of say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it happen. And I've decided this is true. But you also then need to talk to maybe other entrepreneurs, which will sort of, they'll tell you, listen, I made this decision, that the one you're agonizing over is the one you need to make. Listen, we're out of time. I have my director screaming at me to shut all this thing down. As always, it's fascinating. Been talking to you, and we'll continue these conversations over coffee. The great thing about you being a coffee entrepreneur is number one, we always know where to meet.
Yes, exactly.
That's very much true. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for the conversation and continued luck in the journey of FUDI&Co.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.